So as usual, we'll start with some prayers and meditation. And it's good to visualize while we're reciting the prayers and doing the meditation, and to visualize the Buddha in front of us or in front of you, wherever you are. Visualize the Buddha in space, about the level of your forehead, and made of light. The whole appearance is of light, transparent and radiant and beautiful, and radiating all his excellent qualities. Compassion, great compassion, extending to all living beings throughout space, totally dedicated to helping each and every single sentient being without excluding anyone, and totally dedicated to being there for us, helping us, taking care of us until we are completely free of suffering and the causes of suffering, and until we have reached the state of full enlightenment as well, the state the Buddha himself reached. So he's dedicated to bringing all of us to enlightenment. And he has the knowledge, the skillful means, the wisdom, so all the qualities to be able to help us and guide us. Really feel confident in the Buddha, feel the Buddha is someone you can trust, you can rely on, you can put yourself under the compassionate care and guidance of, to fulfill your needs, your wishes, and to reach that state of Buddhahood as well, so that you can help all other beings fulfill their wishes too. And so we'll recite the prayers, taking refuge and generating bodhicitta and so on. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment to friends and hatred for enemies. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence, and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirataya. Then we'll recite the mantra of the Buddha a few times. While doing that, you can imagine light and nectar flowing from the Buddha. it's his excellent qualities and wisdom and all his abilities and realizations in the form of light flowing into each and every one of us. And you can imagine it going to all other sentient beings all over the universe. And our bodies and minds get filled with this pure, blissful light. And it purifies our negative karma and afflictions. So all our problems and causes of problems are purified. And it also nourishes our positive potential, seeds or imprints in our mind to be able to have more positive qualities and gain the same realizations that Buddha himself gained. Taya ta om mune mune maha munaye soha. Taya ta om mune mune maha munaye soha. Taya ta om mune mune Mahamanaye 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 soha. So take a few more minutes to make sure your mind is settled down in the present, not thinking about the past or the future, other things. Put all those aside for now. And generate a really positive motivation for being here, participating in this class. Really open your heart to all living beings and how they're suffering, although they don't want to suffer, just like we don't want to suffer. And they want to be happy, just like us, but they're not able to find genuine, lasting happiness because of ignorance, not knowing how to get that. So really feel compassion and the wish to help them. And by learning about the path to enlightenment, the Bodhisattva's path, then we'll be able to start practicing that path and creating the causes to become a fully enlightened Buddha ourselves, and then be able to help all other living beings, to guide them out of suffering and its causes, guide them to genuine happiness and its causes, all the way up to the highest happiness of enlightenment. So really try to make that your motivation for being here, listening to this class. So tonight we'll do a meditation on Tonglen, or taking and giving. So we've been meditating on the various points of the method for developing bodhicitta, known as equalizing and exchanging self for others, where we first contemplate how we're all the same, all living beings, all sentient beings are the same, and that we want happiness and do not want suffering. And then we look at the disadvantages of being self-centered or selfish, thinking only of ourselves, placing ourselves at the center of the universe and making that our number one priority, just achieving our own happiness and freeing ourselves from suffering and not caring about others. So that kind of attitude dominates our mind, dominates our life, motivates most of the things we do, but this is normal. This is how sentient beings in samsara are. But we can change this. We don't have to continue being under the control of that kind of attitude. And then we looked at the opposite attitude, which is cherishing others, or altruism. We gradually transform our priorities and become more concerned for others than for ourselves. And that has a lot of advantages, as we've looked at. So just briefly remember those points that we've contemplated and really try to feel convinced that cherishing others, altruism, dedicating yourselves to the well-being of others is much more satisfying and brings the greatest peace and happiness for yourself and also for others. And it's also an essential thing to do in order to develop along the path and succeed in following the path and reaching enlightenment. So really try to feel convinced that it's necessary, it's important to bring about this change in our attitude and become more concerned for others and less self-centered. But then, even if we do sincerely feel the wish to change our attitudes in this way, we may feel overwhelmed by how difficult it is, because self-centeredness is so strong and so pervasive and so much like a habit. We're so familiar with it, and it can seem very difficult to stop being that way and to be more concerned for others. It is difficult to change, but it's not impossible. And there's a technique that is very helpful, very effective in bringing about this transformation of the mind, the technique of Tonglen, or taking and giving. So you probably heard about this, but I'll just briefly explain it. The taking part involves meditating on compassion, generating a sense of compassion for other beings, seeing how they suffer and really wanting them to be free of suffering, and then getting to the point where you want to take their suffering onto yourself. You would rather have that suffering yourself than have them have to go through it. So you imagine taking away the suffering of others and taking it into yourself, and then using that suffering to eliminate, to overcome the self-centered attitude in our heart. And the giving part is to meditate on love, loving kindness, and really wish others to have happiness. And then generating that feeling so strongly that you're willing to give your own happiness to others. If you could do so, if you could give everything you have that is good and joyful, beneficial, you would like to give that to others so that they can enjoy happiness. And then you imagine all your resources, your body, your good health, your merit, your virtue, and so on, all the good things you have. Imagine them as a kind of wish fulfilling jewel, and then it sends out light and becomes whatever others need to be happy. And so the traditional way of explaining the practice is like that. You do it with others, take away their suffering and give them happiness. And some people are comfortable doing that right from the beginning, but other people feel uneasy, even frightened with the idea of taking away others' suffering. So they say it's good to start with yourself by taking on your own suffering and giving yourself happiness. So we'll do that tonight. We'll do the Tonglen practice in that way tonight. And then next time we can do it with respect to others. So think about problems, painful experiences that you will likely go through in the future. For example, later tonight or tomorrow or the coming week, coming month. What kind of problems might you encounter? There might be physical problems. You might get sick. You might have a stomach ache, a headache. You might get injured and have pain in some part of your body. You might experience things that are distressing, things not going the way you want them to go, going opposite to the way you want them to go, and so on. So just try to imagine what kind of problems you'll be experiencing in the near future. Then think about problems you'll probably experience later in life. As your body gets older, you have more difficulties related to aging, and probably more illness, more things going wrong with your body. And also on the mental or emotional level, again, things happening other than the way you would like them to, unexpected problems appearing in your life, not getting what you want, and so forth. Just realize that there will be such problems, such experiences coming in the future. And then at some point, we don't know when it will happen, but we will die. This life will come to an end. We'll face the end of our life, and that will bring various problems with it. Again, it could be physical pain or other difficulties, and most probably mental or emotional ones, anxiety, fear, not wanting to die, and other kinds of things coming up in our mind. So contemplating these problems that your future self will experience, generate compassion for yourself. Compassion for this future you who will have to face these problems, these difficulties without choice, without control. Really feel the wish for your future self to not have to suffer and to be free from all these different kinds of problems and difficulties. If it's difficult to really have that feeling, you could try just saying to yourself, how wonderful it would be if my future self could be free from all suffering and causes of suffering. Then generate the wish to take away those problems and take them onto yourself now so that your future self can be free of them. Imagine those sufferings taking the form of smoke, fog. Imagine drawing that to yourself. You can imagine it, breathing it in if you want, or just coming into yourself in whatever way you like. And imagine that at your heart chakra, your self-centered attitude, this attitude of thinking I am the most important person in the world, everything has to revolve around me. So that kind of attitude, imagine it there in your heart as a kind of lump, blob. And when the suffering of your future self comes into you in the form of smoke or fog, imagine it transforming into a bolt of lightning or thunder or even a bomb. And it crashes down on this lump of your self-centered attitude and completely smashes it into smithereens so that it's not there anymore, gets destroyed. Remember, this is just an attitude in your mind. It's not you. It's just a certain aspect of your mind that is self-centered. So that's what we are smashing, destroying, overcoming. And imagine that all those self-centered thoughts, those thoughts about I, me, I'm so important, they just vanish. They just stop happening. They're not there anymore in your mind. And just let your mind rest for a few moments in the peacefulness that that brings. Now generate a feeling of love, loving kindness for your future self. Wishing that future self, future I, to be happy, to have good experiences, not bad ones. And especially to have the inner qualities, the inner resources to be able to stay happy and positive no matter what happens. And now imagine that all your good qualities, your virtue, your knowledge, your wisdom, your kindness, your compassion, and your body, your resources, things you own, your health. So all the good things you have at present, imagine gathering all those things together, and it transforms into something really beautiful, like a beautiful light or a wish-granting jewel, sparkling, bright, pure. You can imagine it at your heart, center of your chest. And imagine light rays going out from this to your future self. And the light transforms into whatever your future self needs to be happy. Both external things like enough food to eat and a place to live and, good experiences coming from outside, but more importantly, the inner qualities that are needed to be able to stay happy no matter what kind of situation happens, even illness, even death, but being able to remain positive and use those experiences in the spiritual path. So imagine giving your future self all of those things. And imagine your future self receiving all those things and looking happy and peaceful and positive. Remember that the main cause of happiness is Dharma. So imagine giving your future self whatever she or he needs to continue practicing Dharma, staying connected with spiritual teachers and spiritual friends, having all the conditions to continue practicing the Dharma, especially the inner conditions, the aspiration to continue practicing Dharma, confidence, joyous effort to keep practicing right up to the end of life. So imagine giving all of that to your future self. Your future self looks happy, radiant, and they're flourishing. So doing the practice like that with our own self and the kind of problems we'll experience in the future can make it easier to then later do the practice with others, starting with people like family and friends, people we already care about, and so on. So we'll try that version next week. Okay, so let's continue in our exploration of the 70 topics, the main topics of the Ornament for Clear Realization. Wonderful text by Maitreya Buddha. So in the last class, we covered chapter 5, which is about peak application. And today my plan is to cover chapters 6 and 7. They're both relatively short. And then maybe if we have time, we can start on chapter 8, which is all about enlightenment and the 4 kayas, 4 Buddha bodies. So there's a lot of very interesting material in that. So if we could have the slides on the screen. Okay, so chapter 6, the topic of chapter 6 is serial application. It's not like Cheerios cereal, but serial as in progressive. They sound the same, don't they? Okay, so so serial application is one of the 4 kinds of applications. And applications, again, are practices that a bodhisattva does, bodhisattva's yogas. And all of these 4 applications are different ways of working with the 173 aspects, which we looked at briefly. We looked at a few of those. But yeah, mainly a bodhisattva needs to meditate on and train in these 173 aspects in different ways. The way they do that is with these 4 kinds of application. So I didn't give a definition here, but just a rough explanation. Serial application is said to cultivate the 173 aspects serially or progressively in order to attain stability in them. So it's practiced to attain stability in the 173 aspects. And the meaning of stability in the second bullet point, stability means having the ability to take one of the aspects to mind, and all the remaining aspects will arise effortlessly in one moment. So, you know, that's 173 aspects, and each of those aspects is itself quite complex, you know, contain a lot of different material. And so when, you know, at some point a bodhisattva will be able to just think of one of the aspects, like the first aspect is impermanence. So by thinking of that, all the others will pop up in their mind in one moment, effortlessly. So they'll be able to have all of them in their mind in a single moment. And when it says a moment, the traditional way of determining a moment is 1/65th of a finger snap. So if you snap your fingers, I don't know how long that takes. It's probably less than a second, but divide that into 65. So one of those portions is a moment. So that's a pretty short amount of time. So the point at which the bodhisattva is able to do this, has this stability, is right at the end of the path, the last moment before they're a Buddha. And at that point, they have what's called instantaneous application, which is the next one we're going to look at. That's the subject of chapter 7. So I'm kind of jumping ahead. But serial application, this one here, is practiced to be able to attain that last type of application, instantaneous application. And that's when you have this ability to bring all of the 173 aspects into your mind at once in one moment, effortlessly. So you train a lot. So the bodhisattva has to train a lot over a long period of time to be able to do that. And so this kind of application is what they use to do that. So it's the next bullet point says, it exists from the Mahayana path of accumulation up to just before the end of a sentient being's continuum. Okay, so you start doing this from the time you become a bodhisattva. When you have uncontrived bodhicitta, you enter the path of accumulation. So from that time on, you start to do this kind of practice, this training, and you continue doing it all the way through the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, right up to the last moment. And the reason it said it ends just before that moment is because at that moment it transforms into the next application, which is instantaneous application. So this is like the cause, and then the effect is, the result is instantaneous application, the fourth one, which we'll look at later. So then it has 13 topics. So this is the largest number of topics of all the chapters, and yet it's also one of the shortest chapters. So these 13 topics are not explained very extensively, but I'll talk about a few of them. So the 13 topics are here. It says the serial applications of the 6 perfections. So the first 6 of the 13 are the 6 perfections. Following that are the 6 recollections, which I'll explain in the next slide. And then the last one is the entityness of non-things. So I'll just briefly explain at the end. So we're familiar with the 6 perfections, giving, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, wisdom. There's different ways of translating them, but that's one way. So we probably all heard teachings on the 6 perfections, but the way of, well, here it's the serial application of the 6 perfections. So the way that is practiced, for example, the first perfection is giving or generosity. So the serial application of generosity is that when you're practicing generosity, you're giving a gift, for example, giving money to a homeless person or food to a hungry animal or whatever, you're an act of giving. So you, while doing that, you have this awareness of the 3 spheres, 3 parts of the action. In the case of giving, it says the giver, you, the giver, the gift, whatever it is you're giving, and the recipient, person receiving it. So those 3 things are all empty of true existence. So we've heard that before when we had the one of the earlier topics of achieving of armor. When a bodhisattva is practicing any of the 6 perfections, they have to practice all 6 together, including the perfection of wisdom. And the perfection of wisdom involves thinking that these 3 spheres, the subject, the object, and usually it said the action. Usually the action is the 3rd one. Here it says the gift. And I did ask my teacher about that. And he said, well, the action is implied because if there's a giver and there's a gift and a recipient, obviously there's an action too. So yeah, I guess there's different ways of contemplating it. But anyway, all the different elements, you could say, all the elements, all the aspects of the act of giving are equally empty of true existence. So maintaining that awareness. And so you apply that to the other remaining perfections, like when practicing ethics, refraining from killing, refraining from stealing, keeping your vows, your precepts, and so on. So you have this awareness of yourself, the practitioner, and then the action of restraining yourself from these non-virtuous actions. And then there's a recipient or an object, somebody you could kill, but you decide not to. You've restrain yourself from killing. So, I mean, that is important. Not everybody can do that, as we know. Every day in the world, we hear stories of murders and horrible acts of violence. So it is to be commended. It is something to feel good about, to feel happy about, that we are able to restrain ourselves from that kind of action. Yeah, so anyway, the three elements of that act of keeping ethics, practicing ethics, are all empty of in true existence, So that's how one practices the serial application of the six perfections. And then, yeah, so as for the others, we'll look at the next slide. Yeah, so the serial application of the six recollections, these are not so well known in the Tibetan tradition. They are in the Pali tradition. So they exist both in the Pali and Sanskrit traditions. And I recently gave a series of talks on these, so I'm kind of a little bit more knowledgeable about them. But there are differences in the way they're explained in the Pali tradition and in the Sanskrit tradition. So I'll just, briefly mention. So in the Pali canon, when the Buddha taught these practices, and he taught them as methods to put yourself into a good state of mind, a state of mind that's calm, peaceful, pure, not full of afflictions. And so it's a more conducive state of mind for the practice of meditation. Like if you want to go into, do meditation, doing these will help you be in a better state of concentration for your meditation. And in the Sanskrit tradition, like here in the context of the Ornament, well, they're in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So there, the Bodhisattva is advised when doing any of these practices, any of these recollections, that they remember the two truths, that things exist conventionally, but they are empty of ultimate or true existence. So maintaining that awareness of the two truths. So recollection of the Buddha, in the Pali tradition, this involves contemplating the Buddha's qualities. And one way of doing that is by reciting, there's certain, not really prayers, but certain recitations that you can do. So there's this actually one that the Dalai Lama often does, at least when he teaches in India, when he teaches to large gatherings. And it's also done sometimes in the FPMT and other places. So it's a recitation that starts with, to the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, and so on. So it kind of lists all these qualities of the Buddha. And so, reciting that and contemplating those qualities is one way of doing this recollection of the Buddha. So that's the meaning, essentially, of that practice, contemplating the qualities of the Buddha, and then that inspires you, puts you in a good state of mind for meditation. And then my teacher said, in the Sanskrit tradition, this practice, of course, it does involve thinking of the Buddha's qualities, but in addition to that, one also thinks about what are the causes to become a Buddha, and then aspiring to create those causes and become a Buddha oneself. And then the second one is the recollection of the Dharma. And that's similar. It involves, in the Pali tradition, it involves contemplating the good qualities of the Dharma. And the main meaning of Dharma is the last two of the four truths, true cessations and true paths. So that's the real Dharma, because those are the things we're trying to develop in our minds, to make part of our minds, the cessation of all afflictions and obscurations, and then the true paths, mainly the wisdom realizing emptiness, which is the thing that gets rid of all the obscurations. So true cessations and true paths is the main meaning of the Dharma, but then Dharma can also include the teachings and the practices that enable us to reach those states. So yeah, reflecting on the good qualities of the Dharma. And then in the Sanskrit tradition, this is explained as also involving thinking about virtuous actions, the things we need to practice, such as the 6 perfections, and then the non-virtuous things we need to give up. So just being very clear about what is virtuous and what is non-virtuous, but also at the same time contemplating that although these things exist conventionally, they do not exist ultimately or truly, so that we don't have grasping at truly existing virtue or truly existing non-virtue. And the third is recollection of the Sangha. Again, in the Pali tradition, it involves thinking of the good qualities of the Sangha. But Sangha here mainly refers to the Arya Sangha. That's the real meaning of Sangha. The Arya beings, those are the ones who've attained the direct realization of emptiness. So they have really excellent qualities, their wisdom, of course, and their virtue. They're much more firm in their practice of abandoning non-virtue and practicing virtue and so on. And then in the Sanskrit tradition, this is thinking again of the Sangha, but mainly the Arya Bodhisattvas, such as the irreversible Bodhisattva Sangha on the path of seeing and above. So some time ago, maybe last week or the week before, we looked at that meaning of irreversible, that the Bodhisattvas at a certain point will attain a sign showing that they are irreversible from enlightenment. And I was talking the other day with Geshe Dadul about this, and he said, the real meaning of this is the Bodhisattva has gained a kind of certainty, a kind of confidence in themselves, that they no longer have to worry about falling down or falling back or losing it, or giving up their path. So that's how a sign comes about. It's when they gain that kind of confidence, their practice is firm enough that they know they are irreversible. They don't have to worry about that anymore. Yeah, so contemplating the Arya Bodhisattvas, especially the irreversible ones, and aspiring to be like them ourselves. Recollection of ethics, number 4, in the Pali tradition, this involves contemplating your own practice of ethics. So you think about your own, for example, as Buddhists, we usually take precepts, a certain number of precepts. Some people take monastic precepts, other people take lay precepts. There's also Bodhisattva precepts, tantric precepts. So taking precepts and keeping precepts is part of the practice of ethics. In fact, it's the main practice of ethics. And so recollecting ethics means you contemplate your practice of ethics, the precepts that you're keeping, and feel good about it. Not proud or arrogant, conceited, but just, wow, it's great. What I'm doing is really good. So you're kind of rejoicing in your virtue and your practice. And that's a way of giving yourself encouragement to keep going, keep doing what you're doing. So again, it's a way of putting yourself into a good state of mind. And it's similar in the Sanskrit tradition. It involves reflecting on what actions should be practiced and what should be avoided. So just being really clear about that, what I should do, what I shouldn't do. And then recollection of giving, number 5, is similar in that you're contemplating your own practice of giving. There's 4 different ways of giving materials, giving protection, giving Dharma, giving love. So whatever of those practices you're doing, then contemplate that and rejoice in what you're doing. That's the Pali explanation of that. And then in the Sanskrit, they add on recollecting the benefits of giving. So contemplating, the vast benefits of giving. So again, that would be a way of encouraging yourself, giving yourself encouragement to keep doing that practice. Then number 6, I'm going through these very quickly, but there's actually a lot of material there, and they are quite beautiful practices to do if you have the time to do them. Number 6 is recollection of the gods. And in the Pali tradition, this involves thinking about the gods, the devas. These are beings in higher realms than where we are. And they are there in those realms because they created a lot of virtue. They have good qualities and created virtue to be born in those upper realms. So by thinking about the good qualities they have, or at least they had in the past to end up where they are now, and then recognizing we have those good qualities too. We also have virtue. We also have faith. We also have purity, and I can't remember all the other qualities, but anyway, Buddha mentioned a number of good qualities of the gods, and then seeing those in ourselves. And this enables us to have more self-confidence instead of thinking, oh, I'm hopeless, I'm useless, I can't do anything right, and so on. Yeah. In the Sanskrit tradition, I came across a few different explanations. They say that the term gods could refer to Aryas who are in the God realms. So this is something you don't always hear about, but there are Aryas because, for example, hearers who are striving for nirvana. So they are determined to attain nirvana, and they're practicing with that in mind. And it usually takes a number of lifetimes to get to nirvana. You can't reach it in one lifetime. And so in these lifetimes, they might be born in the human realm, but they could also be born in the God realms, both in the desire realm, in the form realm, the formless realm. So there's some who take many lifetimes. And so they they kind of go through different rebirths in different realms, even up to the formless realm. And so they're in the God realms, but they're not there to enjoy themselves. They're not there just to have a good time. They're there to continue practicing and developing their wisdom and other qualities to attain nirvana. And so so there are Arya beings, practitioners who were born in the God realm. So that's one way of thinking of the gods, is the Aryas who are in the God realms and thinking about their good qualities, but also thinking of them as witnesses. When we do certain practices, we call upon the Aryas, or we call upon the Buddhas, because that's another explanation, is the gods actually refers to the Buddhas or our spiritual teachers. And so then recollecting them can involve thinking that they are witnesses to our actions, both our virtuous actions when we do good things. They are there, aware of what we're doing, rejoicing in what we're doing, giving us encouragement. They're also aware of our non-virtuous actions. So when we mess up, we do things we shouldn't be doing, or come under the control of our afflictions, they're aware of that as well. So having that sense of there are beings with greater wisdom, greater awareness, who know, who are aware of us and aware of what we are doing, that can help us to practice better. So that's, yeah, how that one is explained in the Sanskrit tradition. And then, so those are the 6 recollections, briefly. The 13th topic in this chapter is called the entityness of non-things. And that's said to be the wisdom realizing the emptiness of true existence of all phenomena. And I didn't find any further information about that. That was it. So we've heard that before anyway, that this is a very important practice the Bodhisattva needs to develop. And so this is one of the 13 topics here. So our teacher explained that the way that a Bodhisattva practices these 13 topics of serial application is that so again, their serial application itself involves cultivating the 173 aspects in a progressive way, in a serial way, kind of one by one in order. So they cultivate the aspects in that way. And in addition to that, they practice these 13 topics in their break times, or in between meditation sessions. And these 13 topics influence or affect their practice during meditation. So for example, developing generosity and ethics and patience and so on in between sessions. So they develop very strong practice of those, and then those practices will influence their mind when they're in meditation, and cultivating the 173 aspects. It sounds really complicated, but anyway, just to point out how the 13 topics relate to serial application. And so it was said that it's a bit like when we start our day with a good motivation, as we're advised to do, to generate bodhicitta, or at least love and compassion, and want to live our life and our day in a positive way and do what's helpful and avoid doing harmful things and so on and so forth. So if we start a day with a good motivation, then that good motivation will influence all the other actions we do during the day. Hopefully, we won't forget our motivation, but it will carry through and affect us, affect the way we act, the way we behave during our day. So we probably have some experience of that. So it's similar with a bodhisattva, that in between meditation sessions, they're practicing these the 6 perfections and the 6 recollections and so on. And then when they're meditating, the practice that they did during the break times will affect their mind when they're meditating. I hope that's clear, as much as I understand it. It's still way, way above me, above and beyond me. Okay, then let's move on to chapter 7. And I think, chapter 6 has just one verse. That's right. Chapter 6 is one verse. And chapter 7 has 5 verses, but it's still, relatively quite short. So the subject of chapter 7 is instantaneous application. And the definition here is it's a bodhisattva's final yoga that has attained stability in the aspects of the three exalted knowers. So, with number 6, chapter 6, we looked at how serial application is practiced in order to attain stability. And so this is when you have actually attained stability. So when you attain that stability, that ability to bring to mind one of the 173 aspects, and all the others will pop up as well in one moment. So that is the meaning of this one, instantaneous application. So when you achieve this, you can meditate on all 173 aspects in the right order in a single moment. Imagine that. So the cause of achieving this is serial application, the previous one. So as a result of training in that over a long period of time, remember, Bodhisattva spends eons, many, many lifetimes, many eons practicing like this, these different trainings, but also accumulating merit, accumulating wisdom, doing purification, and so on. So finally, one reaches this point where one has this ability. And so where this is found is only at the end of the continuum. So that expression, the end of the continuum, means the last moment of being a sentient being before crossing over into Buddhahood, becoming a Buddha. So the last moment of the Bodhisattva's path before enlightenment. So right after this, in the next moment, one becomes a Buddha. So it said that prior to this last moment, while a bodhisattva is even on the 10th ground, because at this point in time, the bodhisattva is still on the path of meditation, the 4th path, and they are on the 10th ground, the last of the 10 grounds. So while they're on the 10th ground, a bodhisattva does have the ability to bring to mind all the 173 aspects, but they have to exert some effort. They have to make a little bit of effort to do this, to bring all of them to mind. But when they reach this last moment of the path, right before enlightenment, they don't need to make effort anymore. It's effortless. It's just automatic. But of course, that happened only because they made effort for a long time. So you make a lot of effort over a long period of time, and then you get to the point where this can happen effortlessly without effort. And this final moment of the path before enlightenment is called an uninterrupted path. And so we've encountered that term before, like the first moment of the path of seeing is an uninterrupted path. And the meaning of an uninterrupted path, it's meditative equipoise on emptiness. So the mind is focused on emptiness directly realizing emptiness. And so the only thing that's actually appearing at that time is emptiness. So only emptiness is appearing, nothing else. And so this last moment of the Bodhisattva's path, that's what's happening. The Bodhisattva is in meditative equipoise, meditating on emptiness, seeing emptiness directly. And the meaning of an uninterrupted path is it's a particular experience of realization of emptiness that has the power to eliminate a certain portion of obscurations, things that need to be abandoned. So at this point, a bodhisattva is abandoning the last bits of obscurations, both according to this school. They still have afflictive obscurations and knowledge obscurations, both kinds of obscurations. But the subtlest level of those kinds of obscurations. So it's like the last bits of obscurations that have to be cleared away. And so at this last moment, they've developed this mind, this wisdom realizing emptiness that has the power, the ability to eliminate those final obscurations, to be eliminated, to be abandoned. And then, so that's the meaning of an uninterrupted path. And then still, they're still in a state of meditative equipoise when they transition to the next moment, which is the first moment of Buddhahood, first moment of enlightenment. And now I'll just read something here. So this last uninterrupted path at the end of a sentient being's continuum becomes the nature of a powerful potency, being able to eliminate the last remaining traces of obscurations. And in this way, one transfers to the first instant of omniscience, Buddha's mind. At that time, the awareness is placed in meditative equipoise on emptiness in a manner of not arising as long as samsara exists. What that means is, with the first moment of enlightenment, the Buddha's mind, now Bodhisattva has become a Buddha, so the Buddha's mind is in a state of meditative equipoise on emptiness that they'll never have to rise from that. They'll never have to leave that experience of being directly focused on emptiness. Because prior to this, when a bodhisattva is on the path working for enlightenment, they go in and out of meditation on emptiness. They can't maintain their direct realization of emptiness all the time. They rise from it, they come out of it, and then they're in break time and doing other things, but they can't maintain that direct realization of emptiness when they're not meditating. But with the mind of a Buddha, as soon as you become a Buddha, that's no longer the case. Your mind can always remain in meditative equipoise on emptiness forever, as long as cyclic existence lasts. So Buddha's mind is always directly perceiving the emptiness of true existence of all things. And at the same time, the Buddha's mind also perceives all phenomena, all conventional truths. So only a Buddha is able to do that. Only a Buddha can have both those awarenesses at the same time, seeing emptiness directly and seeing all conventional phenomena directly. And there's this expression, it'll come up later as well. It's in the text. They talk about modes and varieties. So modes refers to emptiness. It's the ultimate nature, the ultimate mode of existence of all things. So modes means emptiness, and varieties means everything else, conventional truths, conventional phenomena. So they talk about a Buddha's mind fully seeing all modes and all varieties, every moment, with every moment of experience. So we'll get into this a little bit more once we get to chapter 8 and the different kayas of a Buddha. But anyway, this is the last moment before becoming a Buddha. So it's good to have some idea of what's going on at this moment.
If this moment is direct meditation on emptiness, or the emptiness is appearing, how are the 173 aspects appearing?
Okay, good question. So I think maybe it comes up later. I had something from my teacher. What he said was that, remember we talked about non-manifest minds? It's always an easy way to get out of things like this. So the Bodhisattva at this last moment of being a sentient being, they're in meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness. That's what's manifest. That's the manifest state of mind they have. But they have all these other minds in a non-manifest way. So they have bodhicitta, they have great compassion, they have this awareness of the 173 aspects. So our teacher said all of those things are there in a non-manifest way. And then when they make that transition to the next moment, all of those minds become manifest. So prior to enlightenment, it's not possible to have both a direct realization of emptiness and directly seeing conventional phenomena at the same time. But once you become a Buddha, fully enlightened, you are able to do that. Do you have a question?
Yes, I was just trying to understand. So at that point, they don't have to turn their mind to it, correct? It just naturally arises, because I'm thinking, like, is it like kind of dormant, like in your subconscious, and you have to turn your mind to it? Or is the Buddha just naturally able to be aware of all that at once without turning his mind to it?
It's, totally natural and effortless for a Buddha. Yeah, for a Buddha, no effort is required to have this omniscient awareness of all phenomena. It's completely effortless. And also it said that a Buddha no longer has any conceptual minds. Every experience of a Buddha is a direct perceiver. They directly perceive everything. So they don't have to think anymore. They don't have to conceive of things. Everything is just appearing directly. And without effort. It's a result of this vast amount of merit and practice that a bodhisattva has been doing for so many lifetimes and so many eons. It finally culminates in that kind of experience. So you create the causes, you get the results.
Stephen has raised his hand.
Stephen, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you very much, Venerable. I had a question about the uninterrupted peak application and also the instantaneous application. It sounds like they're happening at the same time, the very last instant prior to becoming Buddha.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so when we were in looking at chapter 5, one of the topics of chapter 5, it was 5.8, is called Uninterrupted Peak Application. And that was said to be at the last moment of the path, the last moment of being a sentient being. So I think they're probably synonymous, that uninterrupted peak application and this one are synonymous. They're just different names, different terms, but they're talking about the same state of mind. That's my guess. I didn't find anything directly saying that, but with regard to these 4 different kinds of applications, they're not like exclusive, but often overlap. Like one mind or one experience could be a number of these applications. It's kind of complicated. We're gonna look at that a little later, but so something, in fact what my teacher said was this instantaneous application, this number 4, is also application in complete aspects, the first kind of application, and it's also peak application, but it's not serial application, because serial application stops right before the end. But it is the other 2. So it's one state of mind or one experience, but it's three types of application.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think
thank you. Thank you, Venerable. And yeah, I think they're both the uninterrupted peak application and continuous applications are both uninterrupted paths.
yeah.
So they're definitely very similar, if
Yeah.
not phenomenal.
And it's this last moment of the path right before enlightenment. So again, there's a lot going on in the Bodhisattva's mind at that point. It's a lot of different things. It's not just only one state of mind, but many. One manifest, but many non-manifest. So I think, yeah, it's similar like a person, you can have a single person who plays a number of different roles, different jobs that they do, or, being a parent and being a son and being a teacher and so on. So it's one person, but they have these different hats that they wear, these different roles that they play. So I think it can be similar with these mental states. So the last bullet point here is it has 4 topics, which are all one entity, but different isolates and occur simultaneously. I decided not to go through the 4 topics because, we just don't have time to do every detail. But the 4 topics of instantaneous application are actually they're said to be one entity or one nature. And we came across that term before. 2 or more things are one entity when they arise together and they abide together and they cease together. So they can't be taken apart, they can't be separated. But at the same time, they're said to be different isolates. So this is kind of a complicated concept in Buddhist philosophy. I don't want to get into it, but it just simply means what it means is, although they are one entity, they can still be isolated conceptually. Like conceptually, we can take them apart and think about them in different ways, even though physically they can't be taken apart. And again, I think a good example of that is a single person, one person who's both a father and a policeman, or a mother and a doctor, and maybe other roles as well. So it's one person. We can't separate physically the different person, the mother over here and the doctor over here. It's the same person. But conceptually, we can separate them. We can say, okay, at this point in time, she plays the role of mother in relation to her children. At this point in time, she plays the role of doctor to her patients. So conceptually, we can understand the difference between them, but they can't actually be separated. So that's the meaning of that expression. One entity, but different isolates. It's complicated language, but the meaning isn't that difficult. Okay, so, there's something else that came up in the context of this topic of, or this subject, chapter 7, instantaneous application. So I just want to, go to the next slide. It's just a kind of discussion in Gyaltsabje's commentary about why is it that a bodhisattva at the end of the continuum can abandon the stains that apprehend the 2 truths as different entities. So again, at the last moment of being a sentient being, right before enlightenment, a bodhisattva is in meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness. And that mind is conjoined with instantaneous application. So they are able to actualize all the 173 aspects in one moment. And at that time, that moment, their mind is separated from the mistaken mental states that apprehend the 2 truths as different entities rather than one entity. So we talked about this before, about how the 2 truths, conventional truth and ultimate truth, are one entity. So if we take any object, like this bowl, this itself is a conventional truth, but it has ultimate truth as its nature. So the emptiness of true existence is right here with this bowl, not somewhere else. So the bowl itself and its emptiness of true existence, which is the ultimate truth, are one entity. They're not different entities, they're one entity. And so it's maybe sounds not too difficult when we think about it or talk about it, but to actually realize it, to actually have an experience of that, it seems like that's very difficult, because even in this last moment, Bodhisattva still has to eliminate the stains or the traces of not being able to see the two truths as one entity. And so that's what a Bodhisattva is abandoning at that last moment before enlightenment. That's, one of the things they're abandoning. And it said that, it's a little complicated. It said that, during an uninterrupted path is like the antidote. It's like the thing that abandons obscurations or stains. At the time of the uninterrupted path, those objects of abandonment are not present, but they haven't been abandoned. It's a hard thing to understand, but somehow they make a big deal out of it. So I'm talking about it. And they give the analogy. There's this analogy, this cute analogy of throwing out a thief and locking the door. So let's say you come home and you find a thief is in your house. And so you push the thief out the door, you get them out of your house, and you close the door. And so at the point when the thief is out of the house, they're not in the house anymore, but you haven't yet locked the door, preventing them from coming back in. That's like the uninterrupted path. An uninterrupted path is like that kind of situation where you kind of pushed out the whatever afflictions, whatever obscurations you're trying to get rid of. They're pushed out, but they're not yet fully abandoned until you lock the door. And the locking of the door is the liberated path. The next moment, the liberated path, that's the moment at which those things have been abandoned and they can't return. They will never come back. And so the last moment of being a bodhisattva is an uninterrupted path. So at that point in time, the mind is still in the process of abandoning the afflictions or the obscurations, the stains, whatever has to be gotten rid of. So that's like the point of getting the thief out of the house, but not yet locking the door. So they're kind of not there, but they're also not fully abandoned. That only happens with the next moment of the liberated path. And so, yeah, in Gyaltsabje's commentary, he gives two reasons why a person is able to get rid of the stains that apprehend the two truths as different entities. And he uses this verse from Aryadeva's 400 stanzas, which says, "One thing is the entityness of all things. All things are the entityness of one thing. Whichever person directly sees the thusness of one thing, sees the thusness of all things." So the first line, "one thing is the entityness of all things," means that all things, all phenomena have the same ultimate nature, which is emptiness of true existence. Okay, so even though phenomena are diverse, there's a huge number of different kinds of phenomena with different characteristics, but their ultimate nature, the true nature of all of those things is the same. It's emptiness of inherent existence. So all of those things on the ultimate level, the real way things exist, the ultimate mode of existence, they all have the same meaning, the same nature, emptiness of true existence. And then the second line says, all things are the entityness of one thing. So what that means is that for an Arya who is in meditative equipoise, directly seeing emptiness, directly realizing emptiness, the emptiness of all things, all the diverse phenomena, appears as just one thing, one aspect, not as different things. So the Arya is only seeing emptiness, not seeing lots and lots and lots of things, just one thing, emptiness. And that emptiness is the emptiness of all phenomena. But even though, we say emptiness is the true nature of all phenomena, that doesn't mean there's only one emptiness. This is a confusing thing. We sometimes talk about emptiness as if it's just one thing, but in fact, emptiness is multiple, because each and every phenomena has its own emptiness, in the sense that when a phenomena comes into existence, like when this bowl was made, the emptiness of the bowl came into existence with it. And if the bowl gets melted down and made into something else, it's no longer a bowl, then the emptiness of the bowl will also go out of existence. So each thing has its own emptiness. So we can talk about multiple emptinesses, infinite number of emptinesses. But all of those emptinesses are of the same nature, of the same taste. Like I like to think of sugar. If you have a bag of sugar, all these tiny little grains of sugar. So there's probably zillions of grains of sugar in a bag of sugar, but each of those grains has the same taste. They all taste the same. They all have the same taste of sweet. So in a similar way, there's multiple emptinesses, but all of the emptinesses have the same taste, not literally, but the taste of emptiness, emptiness of true existence. Then the third line says, whichever person directly sees the thusness. So thusness is another term for emptiness. Sometimes they say thusness or suchness. Those are just alternate terms for emptiness. So whichever person directly sees the thusness of one thing, sees the thusness of all things. So this only happens with direct realization. When one has a direct realization of emptiness, they're actually seeing the emptiness of all phenomena. So even though, there are multiple emptinesses, every single phenomena has its own emptiness, but when emptiness is seen directly in an Arya's meditative equipoise, that emptiness they're seeing doesn't appear as multiple, doesn't appear as diverse. It's just one thing. I mean, I'm not talking from experience, but this is what I say. This is what I've heard. Hopefully I'll get that experience one day. But they say, it's just one thing. But that one thing, that one emptiness is the emptiness of all phenomena. So it's because of this, because of these facts and experiences by an Arya and meditative equipoise, then it is possible for a person, especially this Bodhisattva at the end of the continuum, that they can abandon whatever stains there are in their mind that prevent them from seeing the two truths as one entity. which is how they are. Anyway, I thought that was cool, so I wanted to share that. So then, yeah, before we move on to chapter 8, I had wanted to make a sort of, yeah, we can go on to the next slide, the 4 applications. I wanted to do a comparison of the 4 applications. And I thought of even making a sort of graph showing where they are and how they overlap, but I didn't know how to make a graph. So, so I made this instead. This is basically just showing where they exist. So on the left side are the paths: path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation. And then the last one is the end of this continuum, the last moment of the path before enlightenment. So those are the different places where one of the applications could exist. And then across the top are the 4 different applications. So the first one, application in complete aspects. So again, that's the Bodhisattva's practice of cultivating the 173 aspects in a collective way, gathering them together. And so that exists on all 5 paths, or all 5 places. So starting from the path of accumulation right up to the last moment right before enlightenment. So application in complete aspects is happening all that time, all in those places. And the second one, peak application. So that's where you attain control over the 173 aspects, in the sense that you have a kind of power over them. You can gather them all together and observe all of them. So that doesn't exist on the first path, the path of accumulation. That only starts from the path of preparation, because to be able to attain that, you have to practice the first application. You have to train in application in complete aspects. Then that will give you the ability to have control over the 173 aspects. That starts from the path of preparation, and it goes all the way up to the last moment. And then serial application, that's where you're training in the aspects serially, progressively. That also starts on the path of accumulation, goes all the way up to, but not including, the last moment. So that's no longer there at the last moment, because it transforms into instantaneous application. It's the cause for instantaneous application. So that one, the 4th one, only exists at that last moment. It's absent on the first 4 places, but it's only at the last moment. So that's just to give you an idea of where these are, but I still have a lot of questions myself on these 4 applications and how they work and so on and so forth. So I'm not really in a position to be able to say much more about them. But they are important. They're said to be very important. If you do want to attain enlightenment, become a Buddha, then these are practices that need to be developed and used to cultivate the 173 aspects. So a lot to learn, a lot of work to do. Any questions so far before we move on to chapter 8? I'm really excited to get into chapter 8.
Stephen raised his hand.
Stephen, you have a
Hello,
question?
thank you, Venerable, and whoever spotted that. So this is just more of a general question, Venerable. So when we talk about meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness, so that experience is just an experience of pure emptiness. There's no object, there's no subject But prior to that, in approaching meditative equipoise, does the Bodhisattva have to begin with something like, well, I'll meditate on
Stephen, are you there?
I'm thinking maybe from our end.
He was using his phone anyway, so.
Oh.
Hmm? Well, if he manages to reconnect, then we can, maybe he could write his question in the chat. We could answer it later.
Oh,
Yeah, he's dropped out.
He's gone.
Yeah, he's dropped.
Okay, well,
Okay, oh, I do have one question.
you have a question. Okay.
When you're talking about refraining, like from killing, what's received? I was confused about that.
What's received?
I thought you said there was something like that was received or something.
Three spheres.
When I talked about giving, the
Yeah.
practice of giving, there's somebody who's received. There's a recipient, somebody who receives the gift. But
Okay, I may have misunderstood.
with regard to,
Ethics, I think.
huh?
She's talking about the ethics one. I
Oh,
think.
well, yeah. So when we're practicing ethics, there's
Okay.
3 spheres. So it would be the person who's practicing yourself, and then the action of restraining.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, I don't know, maybe I did use the word recipient, but I meant the being, it's usually a being, like in the case of killing,
Mhm.
yeah. There's a being like a mosquito that's landed on your arm, and you could kill it. Yeah, maybe in the past, probably all did, kill mosquitoes. So there's the possibility of killing it, but you restrain yourself, remembering your precepts, remembering compassion, and so on. So the 3 aspects, the 3 spheres would be yourself, the practitioner, and the being that could be killed,
Mhm.
and then the act of restraining.
Gotcha.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to kill. In the case of stealing, then it would probably be an object, somebody's computer that you could steal,
Mhm.
but you refrain from. So I was just trying to maybe talk about the 3 spheres of the action. Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
So let's move on. Chapter 8. Maybe Stephen will come back. So chapter 8, this is the last chapter of the Ornament, and it's pretty lengthy. Probably the 3rd. I think the biggest one is chapter 1. Chapter 4 is second biggest, and this is probably the 3rd biggest chapter in terms of length and amount of material. So it's about the resultant truth body, but it's actually about enlightenment, Buddhahood. So the definition of a resultant truth body is the way we normally translate the Dharmakaya. So resultant truth body, a final result attained by the strength of cultivating the aspects of the 3 exalted knowers, which is the method for attaining it. So that shows, you want to become a Buddha, you want to reach enlightenment, help all sentient beings, you have to create these causes, cultivating the aspects of the 3 exalted knowers. And it exists only on the Buddha ground. So the Buddha ground is a term referring to where the Buddhas abide. Buddha, not physically, but mentally, mental state of Buddhas. And is mutually inclusive with Buddha. So this is interesting because when we encounter the term Buddha, when we read the term Buddha, we hear the term Buddha, we probably usually think about a person like Shakyamuni Buddha or Medicine Buddha, 35 Buddhas. So we think of actual beings who are Buddhas, who are enlightened. But the term Buddha isn't necessarily a person. It doesn't have to be a specific person like Shakyamuni Buddha. That term Buddha can refer to a specific Buddha like Shakyamuni Buddha, but it can also refer to an excellent quality of a Buddha. And all the four Buddha bodies, the four kayas, are Buddha, but not all of them are persons. We'll get into that more later. We'll understand that. But it's just to understand that the term Buddha has a wider meaning than a person like Shakyamuni Buddha or Maitreya Buddha. And if you do want to talk about if you do want to use the term Buddha in reference to a person, then they usually say Arya Buddha or Buddha Arya, Sangye Pakpa in Tibetan. So that term, Arya Buddha or Buddha Arya, that is specifically referring to a person, a Buddha that is a person. But if you just encounter the term Buddha, it's not necessarily a person. So with our teacher, we went through this comparison, you know, how you can compare two things, the different possibilities. So if we have the Buddha and Arya Buddha, Buddha and Arya Buddha, how many possibilities are there between those? So is there something that is a Buddha but not an Arya Buddha? Something that's a Buddha but not an Arya Buddha? What would be an example? Dharmakaya. Not sure about Dharmakaya, but definitely the nature body. The nature body, we'll get in, we'll maybe start to get into that tonight. The nature body, which is the emptiness of Buddha's mind. So that's Buddha, but it's not a Buddha Arya. It's not a person. It's emptiness. It's a permanent phenomena. So yeah, there is something that's a Buddha, but not a Buddha Arya. Now, is there something that is a Buddha Arya, but not a Buddha?
No.
No, that doesn't work. So whatever is a Buddha Arya is a Buddha. Is there something both Buddha Arya and Buddha?
Yeah.
Yes, example?
Shakyamuni.
Shakyamuni Buddha, yay. So yeah, Shakyamuni Buddha is both a Buddha and Buddha Arya. What about something that's neither a Buddha nor a Buddha Arya? Lots of examples. Tables, chairs, dogs, cats, and so on. Yeah, so lots of examples of that. So that's kind of fun, and it does help get a clear idea about these terms. Yeah, so you can use the term Buddha to refer to Shakyamuni Buddha or Medicine Buddha, you can. But if you really want to be specific, you would say he's a Buddha Arya or she's a Buddha Arya, because the term Buddha itself can be broader than just individual Buddhas, persons. Okay, so there are 4 topics in this chapter. And they are the 4 Buddha bodies or the kayas: nature body, exalted wisdom, truth body, complete enjoyment body, and supreme and emanation body. So each of these is Buddha. Each of these is a Buddha, but not necessarily a Buddha Arya or a person. So mainly this chapter goes through these 4 bodies and gives a lot of detailed information about them. We won't have time to go into all the details, but you might learn something you haven't heard before. A lot of material in this text. So first, before we do that, let's look at how Buddhahood happens. Next slide. So we did talk about this already a little bit. We have the next slide. Okay, so first point says, at the last moment of the Mahayana path of meditation, that's that term, end of the continuum, the Bodhisattva is in meditative equipoise on emptiness, and they are free of all dualistic appearances. So dualistic appearances can include the appearance of true existence, that doesn't appear, appearance of conventionalities, conventional truths, those don't appear, even appearance of subject and object. Actually, when Stephen was asking his question, he said, there is no object and there is no subject. That's not completely accurate. There is a subject, there is an object, but they just don't appear separately. Okay, there is a subject, it's the Bodhisattva, the mind, the being's mind, and there is an object, emptiness, but they don't appear separately. They appear merged into one. Like they say, water poured into water. You can't differentiate them, you can't distinguish them, but they are there, they do exist. They just don't appear. But anyway, that's another kind of dualistic appearance when there's a sense of a subject over here looking at an object over there, like 2 things. So that kind of duality vanishes, and it seems like the subject just flows into and merges with the object. No sense of duality. Somebody asking a question?
When you were talking about Arya Buddha, and you mentioned like the nature body and all that, do any of them count as Arya Buddhas? Because they're like qualities of the nature of the Buddha, not like the actual physical form. When you're referring to Arya, do you mean like an actual form, like Shakyamuni Buddha presenting himself in the desire realm, or?
I think some of the 4 bodies are Arya Buddhas, definitely the complete enjoyment body and the emanation bodies. Those are the emanations of a Buddha's mind and forms. Those are Arya Buddhas. The Dharmakaya, the Buddha's mind, I'm not completely sure. I have to check.
So do they actually have to have, what I'm curious about is a physical form?
No. Well, that's what I have to check, because the Dharmakaya, the Buddha's omniscient mind, that doesn't have any kind of form.
Gotcha.
That's just mind. But whether that counts as an Arya Buddha, I'm not sure. I'll try to find out. Okay, so Bodhisattva's final moment. Yeah, when the emptiness appears, this is the final uninterrupted path. So we've been talking about that already. And again, like I said, our teacher told us that in a non-manifest way, the Bodhisattva does have in their continuum other minds that see other phenomena, such as the 173 aspects and so on and so forth. So maybe they see a huge number of phenomena in these, non-manifest or dormant minds. So what's on the surface, manifest, is the wisdom directly seeing an emptiness, but they have these other things going on. Then that's the last moment of being a sentient being. And the next moment, they attain the liberated path. So the first moment of enlightenment is called the liberated path because it's a mind in which a certain obscurations have been eliminated. In this case, all obscurations totally have been eliminated. So this liberated path in which all the knowledge obscurations, as well as all the afflictive obscurations, have been completely abandoned. So there's no more obscurations left. Nothing no stains, no afflictions, no obscurations, no traces, no seeds. None of those are left, completely abandoned. And all conventional truths are directly seen. So in that first moment of enlightenment, the mind is still in meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness, but all conventional phenomena, conventional truths appear as well. I mean, this is, for me, inconceivable how that works. But anyway, this is what experiences. And in that first moment, they attain the Dharmakaya, the truth body. So because of having eliminated all the obscurations, all the stains, all the things that prevent enlightenment, then enlightenment happens without choice. Even if you say, no, I don't want this to happen, go away, it's going to happen. I don't know why anyone would want to do that, but yeah. And also, all the four kayas are attained simultaneously. So they don't occur serially, sequentially, but simultaneously. And all, yeah. So the way that works is, so the mind becomes the Dharmakaya, omniscient mind. So that Arya's mind, the Bodhisattva's mind, now becomes the Dharmakaya mind, Buddha's mind. And so that's one of the four bodies. And then the emptiness of that mind, which has been there from beginningless time, but was obscured, the person didn't see it. So the emptiness of that mind becomes the nature body. And this is interesting. I really like this. This is cool. Oh, no, sorry. This one. Yeah. So then, oh, yeah. So the Bodhisattva, at that point in time, where is the Bodhisattva? Where are they? According to this school, and according to, Sutrayana school, when, the last life of a Bodhisattva before becoming enlightened, they're in Akanishta, Pure Land. So this is in the form realm. It's the fourth level of the form realm. And it's a kind of part of the form realm, the highest level of the form realm, Akanishta. And so they have a body that is a form realm body, which means it's made of light, not solid like this, very pure. And it looks just like a Buddha's body. It has all the marks and signs, the 32 major and 80 minor marks and signs of a Buddha, of a Sambhogakaya, which we'll get to later. So it has that same form, but they say the marks and signs aren't very clear. They're a little bit unclear, but they already have that kind of form. So when the mind, the Bodhisattva's mind becomes the Dharmakaya, become the Buddha's mind, that body that they have becomes the Sambhogakaya. So that's how the Sambhogakaya is attained. And then, this is the thing I really like. So then for the fourth body, which is the Normonica, the emanation body. So remember how we talked about how a Bodhisattva has the ability to emanate themselves, many, many different forms, like on the first ground, they can emanate 100 different forms, in the second ground, 1,000 different forms, and so on. As they go to higher grounds, they can emanate more and more forms. So by the time they reach the 10th ground, the number of forms they can emanate is inexpressible, meaning it's so many you can't count. Such a huge number, it can't even be counted. So the 10th ground Bodhisattva has been, has all these emanations out there in different realms, helping sentient beings. And when the Bodhisattva becomes enlightened, their mind becomes the Dharmakaya, the emptiness of the mind becomes the nature body, their body becomes the Sambhogakaya. All those emanations become the Normonica. So they become enlightened too. And they are now Normonica, emanation bodies. So I thought that was so cool when I heard that. Wow. Have you heard that before? So it's like they've got everything right there, just the last moment before enlightenment, they got all the things right there. And then when the mind finally gets rid of those last bits of stains and obscurations, then all those things transform into the four kayas. So it's not like the four kayas just sort of fall down from the sky, from space, or newly arise from nothing, but they're just the transformation of things that are already there with the Bodhisattva. And it's the result of this huge amount of practice the Bodhisattva has been doing for so many lifetimes and eons, and collecting all that merit and wisdom and so on and so forth. So they created all those causes, and now finally they have the culmination of the end result of those. So that's as much as we'll do tonight. Next week, we'll go through the four bodies themselves. Does Steve come back?
The Venerable Simple commented that according to Geshe Tashi's sharing at Timothy Institute, the wisdom truth body is Buddha and a Buddha jewel, but not an Arya Buddha.
So the mind of the Buddha
Yes,
is not an Arya Buddha. Okay, that's
and
good.
Geshe Japa Tenchok's Practical Ethics, Profound Wisdom kind of insinuates the same thing, saying that, that the Arya Buddha refers to a person who's fully awake in such an enjoyment body or an emanation body. And lists that the nature truth body is a Buddha, but not an Arya Buddha. He doesn't mention the Dharmakaya, but
There might be different opinions. Be prepared for that. Maybe Panchen Sonam Rakpa has another opinion.
Stephen has raised his hand again.
Is he back?
Yes.
Stephen?
Stephen is back, yes.
Yeah, you want to ask your question?
Thank you for your patience, everyone. If I lose my connection again, please just go on with the rest of the.
Well, we're almost at the end.
Right. So Venerable, I just wondered, looking at these different bodies and your explanation of substantial entity and isolate, do we look at these bodies as if they were isolates of one substantial entity, or are they like separate parts?
My guess, I have to check, but my guess is that they are one entity. They can't really be separated. But I'm not 100% sure, so we'll have to look that up. Yeah. Good question. I mean,
And
definitely, I'm 100% sure that the two aspects of the Dharmakaya, the truth body, the Buddha's omniscient mind, and the emptiness of the Buddha's mind, definitely those are one entity. That's without doubt, because they're the two truths. The Buddha's mind is a conventional truth, and then the emptiness of that mind is its ultimate truth. And so, the two truths are always, the two truths with respect to one object are always one nature. One nature, but different isolates. But as for the other kayas, Samogga Kaya, I kind of think so, because Buddha's mind and Buddha's body should also be one nature. I think so.
Yeah.
Definitely in Tantra. Tantra would say they're definitely one nature. Because the very subtle mind of clear light is what becomes the Buddha's mind, and the subtle wind, which is inseparable from the subtle mind, is what becomes the body. So according to Tantra, they're one nature, but Sutra, I think so, but I'm not sure. I'll try to find out.
And a second question, if I may. This goes back to what I was asking before, and it's about the experience of meditative equipoise, realizing emptiness directly. So in that experience, what appears is just empty, just that taste of truth. So there's no appearance of subject, there's no appearance of object. But in order to enter into that state, does a bodhisattva begin with an object like, well, just to use the common one, the emptiness of the inherent existence of a self-sufficient, potentially existent person? Or can they just say, I think right now I'm just going to meditate on emptiness?
No, there's a long
Sure,
process,
sure.
long process. Bodhisattva first has to, of course, study emptiness and get an understanding of what emptiness is. And then they have to develop a conceptual realization and inferential realization of emptiness. And usually you use one object, and they say the best object is your own self, your own I. So investigating yourself and asking, does myself exist truly or not, inherently or not? And then going through that process, you get an inferential realization of emptiness, of yourself, your own self. And then you can also meditate on other objects as well, other persons and phenomena, and increase your awareness of emptiness. So you start off like that, and then you also need to cultivate calm abiding, and then bring together the two, calm abiding and your wisdom of emptiness, bring those two together and have the union of calm abiding and special insight. And you continue meditating on that until gradually it transforms into the direct realization of emptiness. There's a very good explanation of this process in Jeffrey Hopkins' book, Meditation on Emptiness. It's quite near the beginning. He talks, he has a whole explanation of how to develop calm abiding, the usual, and then special insight. And then he explains how that transforms gradually until the direct realization of emptiness. So he explains all those steps. So I recommend that book.
Venerable, I think my question might have been a little bit too vague. So let's take, for example, an Arya Bodhisattva. Prior to entering into meditative equipoise, do they begin the meditation by selecting some form of emptiness, say being empty of inherent existence, and then a basis, say substantially existent a self-sufficient, potentially existent person? Or can they just choose to directly enter a meditation on pure emptiness, pure vacuity, the experience that arises in meditative equipoise? Am I making any sense at all? I know it's vague.
So you're talking about somebody who's already attained a direct realization of emptiness. And then if they want to go back into that meditative equipoise on emptiness, do they have to use an object and realize, look at the emptiness of that object and then go into that? I'm not sure. I haven't really heard that. There's probably an answer to that. I'll try to look it up. Because I think you do always have to, emptiness is always the emptiness of something. It's not just existing independently by itself out in space. So I would think it seems like you would have to use a specific basis and then, realize the emptiness of that. But if you're already an Arya, you probably just snap right into it. And then go into that meditative equipoise. I think it's like that. I'm not completely sure. I'll try to find out.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable. Where that question comes from is, so often we'll kind of, because we talk about it so much, we'll just take a shortcut and say, that the solution to all our problems is empty. But as you just said, when we actually grapple with emptiness, it's not just pure vacuity like the experience meditative equipoise, but it is, we begin with, and certainly on my low level and the ordinary level, you begin with the emptiness, a certain emptiness of something inherent existence on a basis, a table.
Yeah, emptiness always has to be understood in relation to an object that is empty, that has emptiness as its true mode of being. So, yeah, so emptiness is dependent on conventional truths, conventional phenomena. It exists in relation to conventional things. Anyway, we better stop here. We've gone over time already. So if you have more questions, you can either send them in or we'll take care of them next week. So next week will be the last class. We'll just cover the 4 bodies, but that's a nice place to end. So let's dedicate the merit, the positive energy, spending this time together, looking at these difficult topics, but very meaningful, very beautiful, very precious. So just spending this time with a good motivation is very, very valuable. We've definitely created a lot of merit. Now let's share that merit with all other sentient beings, that it be the cause for all of us to reach enlightenment as quickly as possible, and also for the long lives of our spiritual teachers. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling, wish-granting jewel, source of every benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the 3 sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you for hosting, Lou.